Unbelievable is right. Calvin, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. We start obviously with favorite flavor. We'd love to hear your favorite flavor. And I'd love to understand what was on the menu back in I guess this was 98. Yeah. And so, yeah, please introduce yourself and tell the team your favorite flavor.
All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am so excited. You just don't know how excited I am to be here. I mean, I'm blown away. I'm blown away. I'm just literally speechless, and I'm very seldom am I short for words, but it's just incredible. My favorite flavor has always been garlic parmesan with a little Cajun seasoning. Now, I'm not trying to change up anything, but that somebody called a chef. That might be the next LTO. All right, something to think about.
What year were you introduced to Wingstop and how did that come about?
Well, I first came to Wingstop. The year was 1997. And the corporate office then consisted of two people. Antonio, you hear his name, he was a dreamer. He's the concept creator. Rex Heckelman, who was all things operation. Rex is the author behind the sauce and the seasoning. And I came on board to develop this franchise platform. And that was in 1997.
When did you know the concept was going to be successful? What were some of those early indicators that you thought, you know what, this thing's got some legs or some wings?
Well, for me, it was love at first sight. When I saw it, you got to understand, I know it's hard to believe when you're sitting here and we're on the 16th floor.
18.
Wow. You see, I can't even believe that. And I just got here, okay? And we're on the 18th floor. But we started 1250 Suite I, Northwest Highway, across the street from the company-owned store now, I believe. Northwest Highway in Saturn. The restaurant was only 1,140 square feet. That was both restaurant and corporate office, because my office was the 1/6 top table that we had. So I came from another franchise concept by way of a franchise attorney that told me about Wingstop. I called Antonio, and when I came and when I first walked into the restaurant, and I'm sure some of you can identify with this, it was just magical to me. I knew I was home. It's as if the place had a halo around it. I looked at the little restaurant, and this is before I tried the food. I looked at the little restaurant, and I saw the simplicity of it. And I'm thinking from a restaurant's duplication standpoint, how hard would that be to duplicate? And I looked at the fixtures, and they said Home Depot. That's not difficult. I looked at the siding. That was Home Depot. That's not difficult. There was nothing that was difficult nor expensive about the way this place looked. But it was so simple, and it was just perfect for duplication. And then my biggest question was, what does the food taste like? Because one of the things that I'm a real purveyor of is food. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not the chef. I don't cook at all. Contrary to popular belief, people see me in the wing business. Man, let me tell you about don't tell me about the recipe. I'm not the cook. I don't cook at home. As you can see, I consume everywhere. I cook nowhere. Okay? But when I taste the food, when Rex fried those wings, and I taste all those flavors to the exception of atomic, I knew this was a hit. No question about it. No question about it.
That business model today, Alex, will love to hear this, is still simple, simplistic, easy for operators to operate, and the food is definitely our hero. Yep. You spend a lot of time in your time at Wingstop in the community. And as a Black entrepreneur, what were some of those things that were important for you to give back? And how did you make Wingstop be that community pillar in the restaurants that you operated?
Well, one of the challenges we had back then is that Wingstop had zero brand recognition. Unlike today, you say Wingstop, someone knows what you're talking about. Back then, you say Wingstop, out of three people, you said, have you heard of Wingstop? Two would raise their hand. Both would have the wrong answer because they would say Red Wing Shoes. That was a popular construction, a work shoe company at the time. They said, I know that. That's the place that makes construction shoes. No, wrong. This is a place that has hot wings and several different flavors that are just absolutely delicious. And the way I was able to get the market awareness at an all-time high is that we had to get the food in the mouth of the consumer. So we did crazy things, such as I would have Rex fry a couple hundred wings, and I would go to a local track meet. I'd go to a track meet at 100 degrees in July.
Wanja, you taking notes? Okay, all right.
Yeah, I would go to a track meet, 100 degrees in July, and I would look for the ladies and the men on the first row, and I'd say, listen, there's a brand new wing concept coming to town. It's called Wingstop. Have you ever heard of it? Well, no, we never heard of it. I said, listen, let's just happen to have some wings. Would you like to try some? Just grab a toothpick and just pick one out. And once you start that, now you got almost like a shark feast because she's eating. The next person wants to know, curiosity. And I have these gobs of people and they're just packed. Matter of fact, security's coming saying, what in the world's going on here? I'm saying, listen, they just trying the product. Well, what is it? And I'd have menus. I'd carry menus around in my briefcase. And we would hand out menus all the time. Matter of fact, my favorite place to hand out menus were always the place that had no soliciting on the door. Because what I would do, I would go in and I wouldn't solicit. I would buy something. I'd buy gum. I'm always chewing gum. I'd buy a stick of gum. I'd give a menu to the cashier. And I talked to her. Have you ever heard of this place? She said, I never heard of it. I say, well, you need to come try it. It's just right down the street. And if you come today or tomorrow, I give you 5 free wings free. Well, maybe not. I write on the menu 5 free wings. And I say, I saw her at Quick Trip and I left. So we did a lot of guerrilla marketing back in those days.
Biggest milestone. What are you most proud of when you look back at your time with the brand?
Well, there's so many. The first milestone was when we started this brand, we had nothing. It was just a little 1,140 square foot restaurant on Northwest Highway. And there wasn't an office. So my office was the 6th top in the restaurant. And I would try initially to make calls off of the restaurant phone, which was the wall-mounted unit. So one day I convinced Antonio to listen, let's do this. I need a phone. And he went and bought a phone. Unfortunately, the phone jack was in the furthest corner of the restaurant in the back. So we went and bought about 20 feet of phone cable. And every morning I would plug that phone up and I'd unravel that cable all through the restaurant and I'd set it down. Our first milestone was we got a phone. Folks, we are legitimate. We got a phone. And even more importantly, we got a legitimate phone number. That was our first milestone. As we progressed and we're looking at building this thing, I knew we had to have some things in place, such as we had to have a national distributor. We had to have somebody that can bring these groceries to the back of the stores for these potential franchisees. Because I was confident we were going to have franchisees. It wasn't a question of if, it was just a question of when. So we had to have the systems in place. That's what they were paying for. So we were able to secure a national agreement with U.S. Foods in Garland. That was our first broadline distributor. We were still buying direct from Pilgrim's Pride in Arlington. They were delivering chicken to the back door. Once we did that, I went in search of an architect and a general contractor who could build this thing. Because the first store was built by Rex and Antonio. Matter of fact, first couple of stores, they were very instrumental in building the stores. And we needed to be able to roll this out on a larger scale. So I located a gentleman named John McDonald, who later became a Wingstop employee. Back in the early days, he was the VP of Design and Construction. Well, when I found John, he was kind of in between jobs, and we kind of caught him at the right time because he was doing set of plans. I can't tell you how much, but they was cheap. I think set of plans was a couple $100. So we put the infrastructure in place, and that was a milestone. And The next thing I remember is we finally finished the offering. And as you know, now it's called an FDD. Back in those days, it was a UFOC, Uniform Franchise Offering Circle. It's the same document. But as you know, that document is thick, and it's 23 items along with exhibits. And I was working with Charles Cannon, who was instrumental in me getting there. And we were putting that thing together. Every day, I'd work with him on the phone. Sometime I'd go downtown his office. And once we got that, Antonio would come in normally around 1 o'clock, so I had to educate him. And he want to know 5 things I've done to keep my job. No, I'm not saying no. I was like
Elon Musk.
No, I'm just kidding. So, but he want to know what's going on. So I'd bring him up to speed, and I kind of give him a tutorial on what we're doing in franchising. And we finally finished the offering. And once the offering was finished, Donnie, now I have a legitimate product to sell. But we're still putting the infrastructure together. I'm still putting the legs underneath this stool so we'd have something to offer. And the last piece we needed was financing. Who's going to finance these things? We had an item 7, which gave a range of what these things would cost to build. And it was a pretty conservative item 7, but who's going to build this upcoming, this emerging concept? Who's going to finance that? And probably one of my biggest sources of disappointment was all the no's that I got. I mean, I would go to lenders that I had relationships with other concepts, people I knew very well, and they would listen to me. They were very cordial. At the end of the day, it's never going to work. Matter of fact, I have a couple lenders tell me, listen, we know some people that got an opportunity. You may want to send your resume to me, because this deal.
They didn't believe in the brand, yeah.
This deal will never work. But we finally sourced a CPA who had relationships and knew how to package these things. And he was the individual that was able to provide SBA funding. So now we have the money, the distribution, we can get the thing built. Now you have the legs underneath this stool and something that you could actually offer. That was a milestone.
That's huge. That's great. Yeah, that's right. Takes a lot of no's to get a yes. I love that. Biggest lesson learned as a Black entrepreneur?
Perseverance. Perseverance pays. Perseverance. Expect no. Expect criticism. Matter of fact, criticism is good. Sometimes criticism comes from the most painful sources. Criticism comes from your family. Expect it. Expect it. Know that the way to overcome criticism is with success. I was called a lot of things matter of fact, the largest criticism came from my daughter. I told my daughter, I said, honey, we had a family meeting. I said, listen, I told my wife, I think I'm burned on both ends. I sell these franchises in the day. The store open, Rex get in around 3. I roll up my cord. The corporate office officially closed. So I put my phone in the back. And then at that point, I had my store open. I go in the back like Superman. I change out of my clothes into my chicken suit, get in my little car, and I go from Northwest Highway to Camp Wisdom, and I fry chicken at midnight. Well, there's only so much that you can do. I was exhausted. After a few months, I was at the 6 top, and I don't know if I was working or sleeping. All I know, I was just there. Okay. So I decided and got with Antonio, and he said, listen, it's really time. It's really time. We can get a lot of leverage out of you as an operator because we're going to test a lot of things you're doing in marketing, what you do in the community. I want you to hone that skill and share that with the body. And we're going to learn from your experiences. And so what I want you to do is you need to step away from here. Let somebody else do this, and you go and operate your businesses. So when I call my family together, and I have 3 children, I have 3 adult daughters now. They're in their 40s. My son is 35. now, but they were just children. And I got my kids and I said, listen, kids, this is what's going to happen. Daddy's going to quit. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to fry chicken all day. My son, he didn't care. He's too young, My daughter, they said, okay. Can we go back to what we were doing? But my one daughter, she was visibly disturbed. She was wailing up. She was getting a cry. I said, baby, what is it? What is wrong? She's just disturbed. She's almost trembling. She said, Dad, if you quit your job, then we're going to be poor. I said, wow. I said, honey, come here. Let me tell you a secret. You're poor already. And you just don't know it. Okay.
I love it.
So that kind of put her at ease.
Love it. I love it. What was the moment where you realized either the brand, you personally had made it?
Well, the moment for the brand is two things happened. We had the offering, and now we're ready to step out into this arena of franchising with this emerging concept that no one ever heard of. So I convinced Antonio. I said, listen, we have got to join the IFA. And Antonio is an anti-establishment guy. He's just that way. He just wants nothing to do with anything administrative. I said, we got to join this thing, Antonio. He said, well, it's a bunch of college guys and they're a bunch of stuff. I said, I don't care what they are. They're the standard. Every viable concept is a member of the IFA. We have to join. So he said, okay, write them a check. So I got the application, wrote him a check, mailed it in, called some of my friends at the IFA and said, listen, we're coming. When's the next convention? Convention in a couple of months in D.C. Went back to Antonio. I said, let me tell you something. We've got to go this convention. We're going to put Wingstop on the main stage. It's time. He said, listen, you go. I said, no. We are going. We're going. We're going to go. And what that requires of you is you can't wear jeans. Okay. And this is what business attire looks like. So let's go get the sports coat, go get yourself together, and let's go. And we went to Washington, D.C. for the IFA. And we're working the room like politicians. And as we walk by, we see these concepts with long lines of people. Everybody's trying to get to these brands, to their point of contact and talk to these people because these brands are just so hot. And we walked by and Antonio said, man, I just wonder, look at these brands. And I looked at him. I said, Antonio, look at these guys. I said, what you see right here, one day, Wingstop will be so popular, we'll be just like them. Only we're going to line all our guys up by height. Shortest guy to the tallest guy. And it wasn't long. Look at what Wingstop is doing now. The next milestone is we had franchisee number one, Donnie. Through all of this work, we had franchisee number one. We met Pam McWhorter when I was out looking for financing and talking with lenders. I met a lender who told me about a friend of hers that was interested in franchising, and she was looking for a concept that made sense. Well, obviously, being a salesperson, my lead bell go off. Well, who is she? Let me call her. And I called her up, and Pam came out to the store, and the chemistry was just perfect. We were a perfect fit. And Pam agreed to follow the system, and her partner opened up store number one in Highland Village. That's how we got it. And we had our first legitimate franchise. That was a milestone.
I like it. You really believe in giving back to the community. I think that was really the genesis of Wingstop, is to participate in communities that were underserved, provide jobs in those communities. Talk to me about the early days and how that became really the foundation of the brand and how you carried that forward in your restaurants.
Well, as you know, our customer base skews heavily toward a demographic. And it's not hard to understand, but in that demographic, there's always an opportunity. There's always a need. There's a need for social services. There's a need for employment. There's a need for new businesses, and there's a need for hope. Being an inner city kid, I grew up not far from here. Dallas is my home. I grew up just south of downtown. I saw the plight of the community, especially in the Black neighborhood. I saw communities that were vibrant when I came up in the neighborhood in the 60s that went through the 80s. The 80s devastated many African-American communities because in the 80s, we were plagued with something we never knew about. In the 80s, my generation was in college, most of us. But in the 80s, we came home to a crack-riddled community. It looked different. The people were different. The people you knew were no longer there. And everything about the place that was once vibrant and alive and explosive is now deteriorating because when crime comes in, economic development goes out. People with the money leave. People who can afford to send their kids to private education do so. So the public school suffers. One of the things that I made a commitment to do was that if I could do something about it, if I could bring this brand to the community, I was going to do something that the community has never seen. You see, our communities have never been short on good food. You go to the neighborhood, you can find the best barbecue. You can find the best fish, the best burgers, the best fried chicken. What you can't find is good service. What you can't find is a clean environment consistently. What you can't find is a pleasing atmosphere. And I knew if I could go in, Donnie, with that mentality using Wingstop, and I could do something just a little bit different, I could heighten the level of respect with the consumer. You probably heard in the video, the lady saying, Mr. this and Mr. that. You see, we were going to do things a little differently. We were going to address you, and we got your name. We were going to address you as Mr. or Miss, because I know in the life and time of a Black man in a day, you're called a lot of things, but a lot of them aren't Mr. So if I could just elevate your level of respect a little bit and become that differentiating factor, along with the clean environment, with good trade dress and paraphernalia and pictures on the wall, cool things like Tuskegee Airmen. You know, a lot of people in the community never knew that Blacks had a considerable role in aviation. So I purposely sourced Tuskegee paraphernalia and photos, and we duplicated that. And I put those in the stores because while the wings were cooking in that 15-minute time frame, I would see people.
15 minutes?
Yeah, well, that was a long time. That was a long time ago. Yeah, that was a long time ago, wasn't it? See, y'all fixed that. Yeah. So while that quote time was going crazy, we had to have a way. That's why you put the trivia. That's why I put the TVs in the store, just so it could be a distraction. So get your mind off waiting. You watching sports, and you're listening to this music. But the little store I had, I wanted more. So people will look at this paraphernalia and these photos, and they would see Amelia Earhart. And, you know, my cashiers would know that was the first female to get an aviation license in 1921. And we could share that. And, you know, people looked at us and said, oh, yeah. A lot of guys, oh, man, I already do that. Well, yeah, sure you did. Sure you did, you know. And then this photo is Betsy Coleman. She was the first African-American to get an aviation license in June of 1921, just 1 month after Amelia Earhart. What's so unique about Betsy Coleman is that Betsy Coleman grew up here in Texas in Waxahachie, during a time in our country where Jim Crow and segregation was prevalent. So Betsy couldn't get a license here. She had to literally leave the country, go to France, learn to speak French to obtain a license. And she became the first African-American to receive a license. So you would get all of that in my store. And I would see moms bringing their kids back in for an order, And they'd walk around that little square footage I had, and they would point and look. And Donnie, that's when I knew we're a little bit more than just a wing joint.
I love that. I almost got a little emotional. That was good. Mentorship. You've mentored quite a few along the way, fellow African-American entrepreneurs. Talk a little bit about what mentorship means to you and what advice you would give to someone that wanted to follow the Calvin Golden footsteps.
Well, first thing I would advise, going to follow my footsteps, make sure you get to this stage in life that you continue to get paid. Okay. I'm still trying to fix that. Okay, I'm still trying to fix that. Everywhere you look.
You're doing all right.
Everywhere
you're doing all right.
I get all these inquiries for pro bono. And I told them I love pro bono. Only thing about it, my pro bono wagon broke last year. And I haven't got it fixed. Okay? And don't plan to. But no, seriously, what I would advise anyone, if you're looking at entrepreneurship, I would say do your due diligence. Think about it. Go through whatever thought process you have. Get with your family if there's a significant other, because that's important. Because when you go into business, they're in business too. And understand what you are about to embark on. First of all, if you're thinking about it, it's inside you. It's that thing that's telling you to do it. I'd encourage you to listen. I often tell people who I talk with regularly about entrepreneurship is that it's okay to get out of your comfort zone, because as long as we're in a place of comfort, we learn very little. It's when we push ourselves. We all have had those who've had the undergraduate experience, especially the graduate experience. You have to push yourself. You're challenged at a whole new level. I would tell people that my advice would be, don't hesitate. Do your due diligence. And once you're satisfied with that, do it. Just do it. Because listen, this is my philosophy. Regardless of what you're doing now at your W-2 occupation, regardless of how much money you're making, Donnie and I laugh a lot. I tell Donnie, you're so gifted. I mean, look at this place. I said, man, you missed your calling. Donnie will say, well, it's never too late. Well, it might be too late for you, Donnie, I mean, come on now. I mean, you and I are friends, but hey, but still, I mean, hey, it's never too late, because think about it like this. What's the worst thing that could happen to you if you step out and you try this business for yourself? What's the worst thing? What happened if it doesn't work? Most people say, well, I go back to work. Well, if that's the worst thing that can happen to you, think about it. Are you not living the worst days of your life right now? And you don't even know it. So do it.
I like that. So be comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah. I'd love to open it up now for questions. We have a microphone here in the middle. Anybody has any questions for Calvin? Calvin, this has been amazing, by the way. I've thoroughly enjoyed. I can do this all day.
Thank you, Calvin. Very inspiring.
My pleasure.
As Wingstop looks at the rest of the world as the playground, what advice would you give us for our culture, innovation, menu, anything else?
Yeah, well, this is what I would say. Stay focused. This is what I would say. Stay focused on the core values. Core values will never leave you. Stay focused on the end user, the guest. We can't go wrong when we look at who our customers are and we're addressing their needs. And let's be proactive like we did with the smart kitchen, which was kind of reactive to a problem that had been plaguing us since conception. But let's get in front of the curve whenever possible. And let's understand that despite technology, we're still in a high-touch industry. Let's not lose who we are. Let's not lose our touch, because it's that touch that makes the difference. It's that touch that's when we step out and we do things on a small scale in our community. It's that touch that when we're in a position to where we can do things on a grand scale, like the commitment that we have with organizations like St. Jude. We're obligated to do that. Listen, to much is given, much is expected. And it is more blessed. Jesus said this. It's more blessed to give than to receive. And for a long time, and I grew up in the church, for a long time we would hear that. But it wasn't until I got older I understood what that meant. Think about it. It's more blessed to give than to receive. What does that mean? Well, the net of it is you can't give unless you have already received. So you got it. Share it. Share it. Wingstop, right now, we're on the 18th floor. We got it. Share it. We got it. Hope that answered your question.
Any other questions?
That was great, wasn't it?
Yes. Ellen? Yeah.
I'll go to the mic so they can hear on Zoom.
Yeah.
Thank you, Calvin. I'm so inspired by your story. As a huge Cowboys fan, I was wondering if you could share just maybe a story or two on Troy Aikman in the early days of Wingstop. Have you had any experiences with him that you would care to share?
Oh, absolutely. Let me share with you the Cowboy Wingstop relationship. Store number 2 was awarded to a gentleman by the name of Max Anderson. Max was a CC's Pizza franchisee. And we met Max through a contact that I had in the industry. And Max came over, and we felt that we had a good fit. One day, Antonio and I were coming back from a vendor, and we just took a shortcut, and we cut down MacArthur, and we drove right by the Cowboys practice center at Valley Ranch. And he said, "Hey, man, there's the practice." And I said, "Yeah, that's where the Cowboys practice. That's real cool." And we looked over, and there was a strip center with the space. And we both said, "Man, that'd be a great spot for a Wingstop." Well, when we had Max, we said, "Max, have you thought about Valley Ranch?" Max looked at that spot. We secured that lease. I think Max Anderson was franchisee number 2. And when we put that store there, that's how Troy Aikman got exposed to Wingstop. Because they would come over after practice and they would eat wings. And as you know, the Cowboys, those guys are big. They knew those guys. They'd come in and they really worked the staff. Okay? So we got a lot of exposure. And by this time, the last management group that was in, Andy Howard was over marketing. And Andy set a meeting up with Troy, and we found out just how big a fan Troy was, because he and Max began to talk, the franchisee. Troy would come in often, and he and Max would talk about it. And we would say, well, what if we had Troy on our team? So Andy and Troy's people, they got together, and I kept telling Andy, now's the time to get Troy, because, Troy doesn't have anything to do. It really doesn't. Cowboys hadn't won since 95. Troy is fading quickly.
That's still the case.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no. It's just that he's not fading anymore. He got 2 or 3 gigs now. But I said, listen, let's zero in on Troy. So they invited Troy over to corporate, and Troy is a real nice guy. So we had some sort of agreement that Troy would, for X amount of dollars, and it wasn't a lot of money. For X amount of dollars, Troy would make several appearances. He would come to our conventions. And Troy agreed to sign balls, paraphernalia, jerseys. This is how much time he had on his hands. I literally sit in the conference room with Troy, and I watched Troy sign so many balls, I thought the guy's going to corporal tunnel or something. He just signs his butt off. Matter of fact, I went to Academy, bought me up here, Troy. I got those balls to this day. Haiti didn't date him inside, take his photo or something. But Troy was there. Troy became the face. And through the relationship with Troy is how Wingstop got exposure to Jerry Jones. And you probably remember the commercial. Do we probably still have that in the archives? Probably. Where Troy is talking about, he and Jerry are sitting down there talking. There's one wing left. And Troy, they were looking to see who's got the last wing. And it was a real cute commercial because Troy went for it and Jerry stopped him and said, "No, that's mine." And Troy said, "Well, no, I'm the spokesperson for the Cowboys." And Jerry said something like, "No, but I am the star." And long story short, Jerry ate the wing. Okay.
Shocker.
Yeah, shocker. Yeah, you guys didn't see that one coming. But we were able to get Troy then. That was the pre-Hall of Fame Troy. The next year, Troy got inducted into the Hall of Fame. It's amazing what that honor does for your equity. Because the next year, I think Troy was twice as much with only a fraction of the appearances, and he was signed no more balls. That was it. It was over. So that's how that whole thing got started.
It's good. I think we had one more.
Hey, Calvin. I want to say thank you just for speaking, and also just looking at that video. That was like super surreal for me because that was my family's Wingstop when I was growing up. Like 8 years old, we would go there. We would go to Blockbuster right across the street. Yeah, we would go to Movie Trade & Co. Right. So just that really meant something to me and my family. So just thank you.
Man, thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
That's incredible.
Well, Calvin, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Same here, buddy.
Yeah, original OG. Thank you for your time. Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
My God. All right.